They always warned me about the Graveson family. That strange house at the edge of town where no one dared to go. The locals whispered that the family had a secret, one so dark it could rot your soul. At first, I laughed it off. I didn't believe in curses, and I wasn't afraid of old ghost stories. But that was before I heard the knocking. Before I saw the pale faces staring at me through the cracked windows. And before I found the cellar. Do you know what's worse than seeing a dead body? Seeing one breathe. I should have turned back. I should have run when I had the chance. But curiosity got the better of me. And now, I can still hear them scratching, clawing at the walls beneath my feet. If you're watching this, it's already too late. Don't come looking for me. Don't come looking for them. Because the Gravesons don't bury their dead. They keep them alive, underground. It all started with a dare. They said no one had stepped foot in the Graveson house and made it out the same. Some went missing. Others came back, but they weren't the same anymore. Their eyes were hollow, their voices cracked like dry leaves, and they refused to speak about what they saw inside. The house had a way of swallowing people whole, and spitting out only their shadows. I was never the type to believe in ghost stories. I thought the townspeople were just superstitious. After all, every small town has its legends, right? But there was something different about this one. Something about the way even the boldest men in town avoided that street. Something about the way children screamed at night, saying they heard scratching coming from underground. The Gravesons were once a normal family, until they weren't. No one knew why they stopped burying their dead. No funerals, no gravestones, just whispers of strange rituals and a cellar door that was always locked. When I first saw the house, I felt it watching me. The windows looked like eyes, and the cracked front door seemed to smile. Smile at me with rotten teeth. I don't know why I stepped inside. Maybe I wanted to prove I wasn't afraid. Maybe I wanted to uncover the truth. But now I wish I never opened that door. Because the truth isn't just horrifying, it's alive. And once you know their secret, you can never leave. If you're hearing this, take my advice, stay away from the Graveson house. Don't go near the cellar. Don't listen to the scratching at night. Because once they hear you, they'll never let you go. Derelict House Part 1, The Strange Family. The first time I saw the Graveson house up close, it felt like the air around it was heavier. The trees seemed to bend away from it, their twisted branches clawing at the sky. Even the birds avoided flying over the rooftop, as if the place carried a weight only animals could sense. I was standing at the edge of their property, staring at the crooked sign nailed to the old iron gate. The letters were almost illegible, faded with time and weather, but I could still make out one word: stay. The house itself was massive, a relic from another century. Its walls were weathered and cracked, with ivy creeping up like veins. Shattered windows stared blankly into the world, and the front porch sagged under its own weight. But it wasn't the house that unsettled me the most. It was the family. I first saw them through the window as I walked by. Four figures sat motionless at a long wooden table, their faces pale and waxy in the dim light. They didn't talk. They didn't eat. They just sat there, staring at nothing. One of them, an elderly woman with long, silver hair, slowly turned her head and looked straight at me. I swear her eyes didn't blink. I froze where I stood, my breath clouding in the cold evening air. And then, just as suddenly, the light in the room went out. A neighbor had warned me about them. "They're not right," she whispered as she handed me my groceries earlier that day. "Don't look too long. Don't ask questions. And whatever you do, never, ever go near the cellar." I laughed nervously, thinking she was exaggerating. But the way her hands shook as she spoke made my stomach tighten. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of my floorboards made me flinch. At around 2:30 a.m., I heard it, a faint sound, like fingernails scraping against wood. At first, I thought it was coming from outside. But then I realized, it was below me. The sound stopped. I told myself it was nothing. Just the house settling, maybe rats in the walls. But deep down, I knew better. The Gravesons were hiding something. And the cellar, they said no one who went down there ever came back. Candle Part 2, the first discovery. I couldn't stop thinking about the sound. That faint, scratching noise echoing from below my floorboards. It was so soft, so subtle, that I almost convinced myself it wasn't real. But it stayed with me like a splinter in my mind, throbbing every time the house went quiet. The next day, I tried to ignore it. I sat at my kitchen table, sipping lukewarm coffee, staring at the Graveson house through my window. It sat there like a predator, still and watchful, the air around it heavy with dread. As the sun dipped below the horizon, my curiosity clawed at me harder than my fear. I told myself I'd just take a quick look. Nothing more. Just enough to satisfy the gnawing questions in my head. By midnight, the streets were empty. A thick fog had settled over the town, wrapping everything in a suffocating silence. My flashlight beam cut through the mist as I crept toward the Graveson property. The old iron gate groaned as I pushed it open. The sound made my heart hammer in my chest. The backyard was worse than I imagined. Patches of dead grass and crooked wooden stakes stuck out of the ground like skeletal fingers. I counted them, 5, 6, 7, 10. They looked like makeshift grave markers. I knelt down by one and brushed the dirt away. The ground was disturbed, as if something had been recently unearthed. My stomach twisted. These weren't just graves, they were empty. A soft thump made me freeze. It came from the far corner of the yard, near a pile of rotting leaves and broken branches. Slowly, I moved closer, holding my breath. That's when I saw it. A trapdoor. It was almost completely hidden, its edges covered in moss and dirt. I would have missed it if not for the faint breeze seeping through the cracks, cold and damp like a breath from the earth itself. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed at me to turn back, but I couldn't. My hand moved on its own, brushing the dirt away from the handle. The moment I touched it, a whisper slipped through the cracks. "They're still awake, they're still hungry." The voice was faint but clear. I stumbled back, heart pounding. The sound came again, louder this time. "Join us." The trapdoor creaked, shifting slightly as if something was pressing up from beneath. I should have run. But instead, I grabbed the handle, and pulled. The hinges shrieked as the door opened, releasing a gust of air so cold it burned my skin. And from the darkness below, came a low, guttural moan. Skull and Crossbones Part 3, The Cellar. The air that escaped from the trapdoor was thick and rancid, heavy with the stench of decay. It coiled around me like invisible fingers, prying into my nose and throat until I gagged. I shone my flashlight into the darkness below. The narrow wooden steps disappeared into a black void that seemed to swallow the light whole. My hands trembled as I gripped the flashlight tighter. This was insane. Every rational part of me screamed to close the trapdoor, run home, and never come back. But something stronger than fear tugged at me, curiosity, or maybe something darker. I placed one foot on the first step. It creaked under my weight, echoing like a gunshot in the silence. Then another step. Then another. The deeper I went, the colder it became. My breath turned into clouds in front of my face. The walls were made of rough stone, damp and slick with moisture. Thin roots snaked through the cracks like veins. And then, I heard it again. A faint sound. Breathing. But it wasn't coming from me. I froze, my flashlight trembling as I swept the beam across the room. At the bottom of the stairs, the cellar opened into a cavernous space. Wooden shelves lined the walls, sagging under the weight of dusty jars and old books. Rusted chains hung from the ceiling like the carcasses of long-dead serpents. And then I saw them. Bodies. At first, I thought they were corpses, lined up neatly against the far wall. Their skin was pale and stretched tight over their bones, their eyes closed, mouths slack. But then one of them twitched. I stumbled back, slamming my shoulder against the stone wall. Another one moved, its fingers curling slightly, nails scratching against the floor. They weren't dead. My heart pounded so hard I thought my ribs would crack. My flashlight flickered, and in that brief moment of darkness, I swear I heard whispers all around me. Hungry, so hungry. The beam steadied, and I caught sight of a figure standing in the shadows. It was the elderly woman, the one I'd seen through the window. Her eyes glimmered in the dark like two wet stones. She didn't blink as she spoke. "You shouldn't be here." Her voice was dry, brittle like autumn leaves. I opened my mouth to respond, but the words caught in my throat. Behind her, one of the pale figures let out a low, guttural moan. Its eyes fluttered open, and I saw nothing but milky white orbs staring back at me. The old woman stepped closer, her bare feet silent against the cold stone floor. "They're awake now," she whispered. "And they're so very hungry." I stumbled back toward the stairs, but the moment I turned, I saw them. The rest of the Graveson family. They stood shoulder to shoulder at the top of the stairs, blocking my exit. Their faces were pale, their lips cracked and bleeding. But their eyes burned with something alive. "You came here uninvited," the old woman said softly. "Now you'll feed them, too." I felt cold fingers wrap around my ankle. I looked down in horror to see one of the pale figures gripping me tightly, its cracked lips curling into a grotesque smile. "Join us," it hissed. The last thing I remember was the flashlight slipping from my hand, shattering on the stone floor, plunging everything into blackness. And in the dark, I felt them pull me down.